Caleb McGregor pulled the trigger before his mind caught up with his hands. The man who'd been kneeling over the bleeding woman dropped sideways into the creek, the splash swallowed by the echo of the rifle. Big Cal didn't move for a second. Then he was off his horse knees in the mud, gathering her up against his chest. "Stay with me, ma'am. You hear me? Stay with me." Her lips moved. No sound came. Her good eye opened just enough to find his, and what he saw in it broke something inside him he'd been holding together for 2 long years. If this story pulls you in, hit that subscribe button and stay with me all the way to the end, because what's coming next will surprise you. And while you're here, drop the name of the town or city you're watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. Caleb's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd killed before. Wolves. A mountain cat one summer when the calves were going missing. A horse that broke its leg 3 winters back, and he'd cried then. Never a man. Not until now. The body in the creek didn't move. The water turned brown around it, then red, then brown again as the current carried the worst of it on south. Caleb didn't look at the body. He looked at the woman in his arms. "Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am?" Her head lolled against his shoulder. Up close he could see what they'd done to her. Her left eye was swollen shut. Her bottom lip was split clean through. There was a bruise the shape of a boot print across her ribs where her dress had torn open, and her hands, God, her hands. The knuckles were raw and bleeding, and one of her fingernails had been ripped clean off. She'd fought. Whatever else had happened to her in this terrible afternoon, she had fought somebody hard. "You're all right now," Caleb said, and didn't believe a word of it. I got you, ma'am." Her good eye fluttered open. It was the gray-green color of summer prairie grass after a storm passes through. "How many?" she rasped. "Ma'am, how many were there?" Caleb's gaze flickered to the body. "Just the one I saw. No." She tried to sit up, and a sound came out of her that wasn't quite human. He pressed her back down gentle as he could. "There were 3. There were 3 of them." Caleb went still. "Where are the other 2? "Don't know. Ran." Her good eye closed again. "When they thought I was done. He stayed to make sure." Make sure she was dead. Caleb felt something dark move through his chest, something he hadn't felt in years and hadn't missed. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Hannah." "Hannah what?" She didn't answer. Her body went limp in his arms, and for one terrible second he thought she'd gone right there, that he'd been too late after all. But then he saw the small rise and fall of her chest, under the torn calico. And he thanked God under his breath. The kind of God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. But the kind he was willing to talk to right now anyway. "Stay with me, Hannah," he murmured into her hair. "You don't quit. You don't quit on me. Not after fighting that hard." He carried her up the bank to where Bella stood tied. The big mare was patient, used to hauling heavier things than a half-dead woman. Caleb lifted Hannah into the saddle and climbed up behind her, his great bulk settling slow so as not to spook the horse, one heavy arm wrapped tight across the front of her body to hold her up, the other holding the reins. "Easy girl," he said to Bella. "Easy, real easy now." He rode at a walk. Every time Bella's hoof struck a stone, he felt Hannah twitch against him. "There was a fella," she whispered somewhere into the 2nd mile. He thought she was dreaming until he realized her good eye was open. Tall fella, yellow mustache. He had a scar on his neck, right here. She lifted one trembling finger to her own throat. "If you see him, you don't talk to him. You shoot him." Caleb felt the muscles in his jaw lock up. "Yes, ma'am." "Hannah?" "Yes, Hannah." "And the other one, he's small, skinny, talks too much. He'll try to make a deal with you. He'll say things." Her eye closed again. "Don't listen." "I won't." "Good." A long pause. "Good man." She didn't speak again until they reached the cabin. Caleb had built the cabin himself the summer he married Rose, and he hadn't touched it since she died. The dishes Rose had set out for breakfast on her last good morning were still up on the shelf where she'd left them. Her shawl still hung from the peg beside the door. He kicked the door open with the side of his boot, because his hands were full of Hannah, and he laid her down on the bed, Rose's bed, and only then did he allow himself 1 second to lean against the wall and breathe. Then he got moving. He boiled water on the stove. He tore an old shirt into strips for bandages. He climbed up onto the chair he never used and pulled down the small wooden box he'd been afraid to open for 2 years because it held the things Rose had left behind. The bottle of laudanum the doctor had given her at the end. A roll of clean cotton. A silver needle. A spool of black thread. Rose had been a midwife up in Kansas before she'd married him. She'd known what to do with a hurt body. He didn't. But he had her things, and he had what she'd taught him in those quiet evenings by the fire back when she'd been alive and well and talking about the work she missed. "All right, Rose," he said into the empty room. "Help me." Hannah moaned when he started cleaning the cut over her eye. Her good hand came up fast and caught his wrist with a grip he wouldn't have credited her with, given the shape of her. "Don't," she said. "I gotta clean it, Hannah. Don't touch me. Hannah. My name is Hannah." Her good eye opened and locked on his face. There was no fear in it. There was a flat, hard warning that almost made him take a step back. "You use my name when you put your hands on me." Caleb swallowed. "Hannah, I gotta clean that cut, or it'll fester and you'll lose the eye. Will you let me?" A long beat. She didn't loosen her grip on his wrist. "What's your name?" she said. "Caleb. Caleb McGregor. Folks call me Big Cal." "You shot the man at the creek, Big Cal." "I did." "You meant to—" He thought about that more honestly than he might have expected to be at that moment. "I did." She studied him for a long second. He had the strange, dizzy feeling of being weighed and measured by a woman who was 3/4 dead and still had more grit in her than any man he'd ever known. "All right," she said. "Clean it. But you tell me before you do anything. Every time. You tell me first." "Yes, ma'am. Yes, Hannah." She let go of his wrist. He worked slow. He told her before he touched her. He told her before he poured the whiskey on the cut, and she gasped, but didn't curse him. He held up the laudanum bottle, and she shook her head. "Not yet. Want to be awake." "Hannah, this is gonna hurt some." "Lot of things hurt some, Big Cal. Get on with it." He stitched the cut above her eye. She gritted her teeth and didn't cry out not once. Not even when the needle caught, though tears ran down both sides of her face into the blanket. When he tied off the last stitch, his own hands were shaking worse than hers. "You got broken ribs," he said. I can feel 'em. Can't fix that. Just gotta wrap 'em and let 'em heal." "Then wrap 'em." He did. She fell asleep before he was finished. Her good hand stayed curled in a tight fist against the blanket like she expected to need it any minute now. Caleb sat in the chair by the bed and watched her breathe. It was full dark by then. Outside, the cicadas had started up their summer racket. A coyote called from the far ridge, and another one answered. Inside the cabin, the only sounds were Hannah's slow breathing and the hiss and pop of the wood stove. The body at the creek kept circling back to him. He'd left it there. 3 men, she'd said. 1 dead. 2 still somewhere out there in the warm dark. "Who did this to you, Hannah?" he said quietly, not expecting an answer. She didn't give one. But somewhere past midnight, when he'd fallen half asleep in the chair, she said it without him asking. "My husband." Caleb came awake fast. "Ma'am, my husband sent them." Her good eye was open and fixed on the ceiling boards above her. "Walter. Walter Jenkins, from over Dry Creek Way." The name struck Caleb like a horse kick. He dragged it up out of memory. Jenkins. The big rancher up north, the one who owned half of Dry Creek and most of the cattle that came through it. He'd seen the man once years back at a county fair. Handsome, soft-voiced, pale eyes that never quite tracked the same direction. "Your husband," Caleb said carefully. "He didn't come himself. He never does the thing himself." Hannah's voice was very flat now, the way a person's voice gets when they're trying not to feel anything at all. He sent the McRae brothers, the two younger ones, and a man called Pike. Was Pike the one? Pike was the one at the creek, yes. Caleb sat with that for a long minute. Hannah, he said. Why? Because I left him. Just for that. A small, awful smile pulled at the corner of her swollen mouth. Big Cal, she said, there ain't no just for Walter. Walter doesn't lose things. Walter doesn't let things go. If a horse throws him, he shoots the horse. If a hand sasses him, he runs the hand off the ranch with nothing to show for 10 years' work. And if a wife of his decides she's done being a wife of his, well, he don't divorce, he buries. She breathed out, careful around her ribs. How long were you running? Caleb asked. 6 days. On foot. Mostly. Got a ride part of the way. Old man with a wagon going to Fort Worth. Dropped me off at a stage stop 2 days back. The men caught me a half-mile past it. Caleb stared at her. She'd been on the move for 6 days, beat half to death by 3 grown men, and she was lying in his bed talking to him in complete sentences about the husband who'd tried to murder her. Hannah. Why'd you leave him? She turned her head slow until her good eye met his across the lamplight. That's a long story, Big Cal. I got time. Not tonight, you don't. Her eye slipped closed. Tonight you got to ride back to that creek before the sun comes up. And you got to bury Pike where nobody finds him. Because if Walter's other 2 ride through and they see Pike laying out, they'll know somebody was here. They'll come asking. And then we got a problem. Caleb was quiet a long time. Hannah. You ain't been awake more'n half an hour, and you're already making plans. I've been making plans for 2 years, Big Cal. I just been making 'em real quiet. He stood up. His knees popped like they always did. He took his coat down off the peg by the door and his rifle up from where it leaned against the wall beside it. I'll bury him, he said. There's a shovel in his saddlebag, Hannah said, eyes still closed. He brought it for me. Caleb stopped at the door, his hand on the latch. He brought a shovel for you. He brought a shovel for me, Big Cal. Walter likes things tidy. Caleb didn't say anything for a long moment. He just stood there with his hand on the door, breathing slow, letting that settle into him. Then he opened the door and stepped out into the warm night. Bon. He came back at dawn. There was dirt under his fingernails, and Pike's horse was on a lead behind Bella. He turned both animals into the small corral behind the cabin, watered them, threw down a flake of hay. Then he took his hat off and walked inside. Hannah was sitting up. She'd dragged herself across the bed to the small side table where Caleb kept his pistol, and she had it in her hand, now resting on the blanket over her lap. She wasn't pointing it at him, but it was there. Caleb stopped just inside the doorway. Mornin', Hannah. Mornin', Big Cal. Her voice was hoarse and weary, but steady. I want to ask you a question. Ask it. Why? Why what? Why'd you stop? At the creek? Why'd you shoot Pike? Why'd you bring me here? Why'd you sit up half the night working on a woman you never laid eyes on before? Why'd you go back out and bury a stranger in the dark so I wouldn't get hunted down? Why? Caleb took his hat off, slow. He turned it in his big hands. I don't rightly know how to answer that, Hannah. Try. He looked at her for a long second. The morning light was coming in through the window behind her, and it caught the dried blood in her hair, and the dark stitches above her eye, and the way her good hand rested steady on the pistol grip, even now. My wife died 2 years ago, he said. Hannah waited. She got sick in the spring. Doctor came out twice. Second time he didn't come back. I sat with her 3 weeks. Last week I couldn't get her to drink water, not even with a cloth. She just went. He turned the hat in his hands. I dug her grave myself. I read over her myself because the preacher wouldn't come out for some reason I never did get an answer to. I sat in this cabin, and I didn't speak to another human person for 4 months. And I figured that was how I was going to spend the rest of my days. I figured I was just done, Hannah. I was done. He looked up. And then I rode out to that creek yesterday because Bella likes the cool water there in the afternoons, and I saw a man kneeling over a woman in the mud. And I saw what he was about to do to make sure of her. And something in me went, no, just no, not again, not while I'm still standing here breathing. Hannah didn't say anything. So I shot him, Caleb said. And I'm gonna keep on saying no, Hannah. Whatever Walter Jenkins wants to do to you, he's gonna have to come through me first. And I ain't a fast man, and I ain't a clever man, but I'm a big man, and I got nothing left to lose. And that makes a fella real hard to kill. There was a long silence in the cabin. Then Hannah lifted the pistol slow and careful and laid it back on the side table beside her. "All right, Big Cal," she said. "All right. All right." She closed her good eye. He thought she'd drift off again, and he was easing toward the door to leave her in peace when she spoke one more time. So quiet, he almost missed it. "My name's Hannah Boone," she said. "It was Boone before I married him. I'm taking it back." Caleb stood there in the doorway with his hat in his hands. "Hannah Boone," he said. "I'm right pleased to meet you." A small broken smile pulled at the corner of her mouth. She slept then. Truly slept for the first time in 6 days, with her good hand uncurled on the blanket and her chest rising and falling slow and easy. Caleb stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her, his hat still in his hands. Outside, the sun was climbing higher over the Texas plain. Somewhere east of here, in a big white house in Dry Creek, a man named Walter Jenkins was sitting down to breakfast and waiting for 2 riders to come back and tell him his wife was buried. They weren't coming back. And Caleb McGregor, Big Cal, the gentle giant who'd not raised his voice nor his hand at another living soul. In 2 long years, laid his hat on the table, sat down in the chair by the bed, and started cleaning his rifle. The morning passed slow, and the cabin stayed quiet. Hannah slept while Caleb worked at the kitchen table, breaking down the rifle, oiling the parts, putting it back together. He'd done this 1,000 times in his life. He'd never done it with a woman lying in his bed who'd been left for dead in a creek the day before. Around noon, she made a sound from the bedroom that wasn't quite a word, and he was on his feet before he knew it. "Hannah, water." He brought her the tin cup. Her good hand was steadier than yesterday, but the swollen one couldn't hold anything yet, so he sat on the edge of the bed and held the cup to her lips while she drank in slow, careful sips. The water dribbled some down her chin. She didn't seem to notice or care. "More?" "In a minute." She closed her eye. "Big Cal." "Yes, Hannah." "What day is it?" "Tuesday, I reckon." "Tuesday." She breathed out. 6 days. 6 days what? 6 days till the auction. Caleb set the cup down on the bedside table. "What auction?" "Cattle auction in Fort Worth. Walter goes every year. Takes most of his men. He's gone 3 days each way plus 3 days down there. 9 days total." Her good eye opened and fixed on him. "He left yesterday morning. That's why he sent Pike and the McRaes after me instead of coming himself. He couldn't miss the auction. He never misses the auction." "Hannah, you ought to be sleeping. I've been thinking, Big Cal, while I've been laying here." "What you been thinking?" "I've been thinking that I got a window, 6 days, maybe 7 if the auction runs long. And after that he's coming home and the first thing he's gonna do is ask the McRaes if it's done. And when they tell him they ain't seen Pike since the creek, he's gonna know somebody helped me. And he's gonna come looking with every man he's got." Caleb sat with that. "How many men's he got?" 23 on the payroll, maybe 30 if you count the ones he just calls in for trouble." "That's a lot of men." "That's a lot of men." Caleb rubbed at his beard with his thumb. "Hannah." "You said I got a window." "Window for what?" She didn't answer right away. He watched her good eye move across the ceiling boards, picking out the knots in the pine. "I got something hid," she said finally. "Up at the ranch, up at Walter's place." "What you got hid?" "A book." "A book. A ledger." She wet her lips. "Walter keeps a green ledger in the safe in his study. Trail brands, cattle counts, Names of who he's paid and what for. Some of the things in that book. Big Cal, some of the things in that book would put a rope around his neck twice over, 3 times. He's paid men to do things to other men. He's paid men to do things to women. There's a name in there of a federal marshal in El Paso who took $2,000 to look the other way on a killing in '76. There's the name of the judge in Dry Creek County who married us and who keeps marrying Walter to whoever Walter wants to be married to that year. Caleb's chest had gone cold. And you've seen this book. I've copied it. He stared at her. What do you mean, copied? I mean, copied Big Cal. 2 years I've been Walter Jenkins's wife. 2 years he been keeping me up at that ranch like a horse in a stall. And every night when he was off in town or out drunk in the parlor, I sat at that little writing desk in our bedroom and I copied that ledger by hand, page by page, into another book. And I hid that book where he won't never find it. Not in 1,000 years. Where? She gave him a long look. In the cellar of the kitchen house, behind a loose stone. 3rd row up from the floor, 4th stone from the corner under the apple barrels. I marked it with a little scratch shaped like a bird. Caleb let out a long breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Hannah Boone, you've been a busy woman. I've been a patient woman. And you're aiming to go back and get it. I'm aiming to go back and get it. While he's at the auction. While he's at the auction. He took his hat off and set it on his knee and looked at her for a long moment. The whole side of her face was the color of a thundercloud. She had 4 broken ribs that he knew of, and probably a 5th he hadn't found. Her right hand was still curled in on itself like a dead bird's claw. Hannah, he said, don't tell me I can't. I'm not going to. Because I'm going to. With or without your help. I know it. That ain't what I was going to say. What were you going to say? I was going to say that if you're going, then I'm going with you. And we ain't doing it on horseback. He'll have men watching the ranch road. He'll have men watching the back trails. I know how Walter Jenkins's work. I worked for one in Wyoming when I was a young man, and I'll be damned if I let you ride in there alone. She looked at him for a long moment, and something in her good eye softened. All right, Big Cal. All right. All right. She closed her eye then, and he thought she'd drift back off. But instead she said very quietly, there's something else. What is it? I ain't going back just for the book. He waited. There's a child up there, Big Cal. The whole cabin went still. A child. Walter's stepdaughter, May. She's 11. Hannah. She ain't his blood. She's my blood. Her good eye opened, and there were tears in it now, the first he'd seen, and they made him feel like something heavy was sitting on his chest. She's my sister Sarah's girl. Sarah was Walter's first wife. Sarah died 3 years back. Fell down the stairs at the ranch house the way Walter tells it. Broke her neck. You don't believe that. I do not believe that. Sarah was the most sure-footed woman I ever knew. Sarah used to climb up on the roof of our daddy's barn at 6 years old and walk along the ridge beam barefoot. Sarah did not fall down a flight of stairs in a house she'd lived in for 4 years. Hannah. After Sarah died, May was at the ranch alone with him, 8 years old. Nobody to look after her except a Mexican housekeeper Walter could send away whenever he liked. And I came down for the funeral and I saw that child's face, Big Cal. I saw the way she looked at him. And I saw the way she looked at me like I was the only thing in the room she could reach. And I knew if I left her there, she wouldn't make it to 12. Caleb closed his eyes for a second. So you married him. So I married him. 6 months after I buried my sister. I married the man I was already pretty sure had killed her. Because it was the only way I could get to that child. It was the only way the law said I could be in the same room with her. He wouldn't let me adopt her. He wouldn't let me take her. He said her place was at the ranch with her stepdaddy. So I had to be the wife to be the mother. You understand me, Big Cal? I understand you, Hannah. And I was patient. I was so patient. I was the best wife you ever saw. I cooked his suppers, and I ironed his shirts, and I sat at his table and laughed at his jokes, and at night when he came to bed, She stopped. I did what I had to do. And every time he turned his back, I copied another page of that book. The silence in the cabin was loud as a heartbeat. "And then he found out you were copying." "He didn't. Not yet. But he started watching me different about a month back, started asking where I'd been, started counting the lamp oil in my desk lamp. And I knew my time was running out, and I had to choose. I had to leave with May, or I had to leave without her and come back." "And you left without her." "Walter sleeps light, Big Cal. He sleeps with one eye open. I knew I could maybe slip out my own bedroom window in the night, and I knew I couldn't get past her bedroom door and out the front of the house carrying a sleepy 11-year-old child without him hearing every step. So I went to her room before bed that night, and I sat on the edge of her bed, and I told her, May, your Aunt Hannah's got to go away for a little while. But I am coming back for you. You hear me? I am coming back for you. 6 days. 7 at the most. You count the sunsets. And on the 7th sunset, I will be at your window." Hannah's voice had gone almost too quiet to hear. And she said, "Yes, Aunt Hannah." And I kissed her forehead, and I went to my room, and an hour later, I went out the window. And I've been running ever since. Caleb didn't say anything for a long time. "What sunset are we on now?" he said at last. "This is the 2nd. 5 sunsets to go. 5 sunsets, Big Cal." He stood up slow. He set his hat back on his head. "Then we got work to do." He walked out of the cabin without saying anything more, because if he stayed in that little room one more second, he was going to weep in front of a woman he'd known less than a day, and he didn't reckon he'd earned that yet. He stood out by the corral for a long time, with one hand on Bella's neck, and he made himself breathe slow. When he came back inside, Hannah was asleep again, her good hand uncurled on the blanket, her cheek pressed against the pillow like a child's. Caleb stood in the doorway and watched her for a minute. Then he went to the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee and started thinking about how a man rode onto a ranch with 23 armed hands on it, found a green ledger and an 11-year-old girl, and rode back off again without getting either of them killed. He didn't have an answer, but he had 5 days to find one. It was past 3 in the afternoon when Bella started fussing in the corral. Caleb was at the kitchen table with a stub of pencil and a piece of butcher paper trying to draw out from memory what little he remembered of the country up around Dry Creek. When the mare made the low huffing noise she only made when there were horses she didn't know on the wind. He was up and at the window before the sound finished. He couldn't see anything yet. But Bella didn't lie. "Hannah!" She came awake instantly. He'd noticed that about her, she didn't drift up out of sleep the way most folks did. She came awake the way a deer comes awake. "What?" "Riders." "How many?" "Don't know yet. Bella heard 'em first." "How far?" "Not far. Couple minutes." She was already trying to swing her legs over the side of the bed. He crossed the room in 2 strides and put a hand flat against her shoulder. "You stay put. Big Cal. You stay put, Hannah. You can't run, and if they see you, the whole game is over. You let me handle this. Get under the bed. Take the pistol with you. If you hear me say the word summer any time in any sentence, that means it's gone bad, and you start shooting through the floor at any boots that ain't mine. Big Cal, will you do it?" A long beat. Her good eye held his. "I'll do it." He helped her down off the bed. She nearly went to her knees from the pain in her ribs, but she gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound, and he eased her down onto the floor and helped her crawl up under the bed frame. He pushed the pistol into her good hand and the spare cylinder into the pocket of her dress. He pulled the blanket down over the side of the bed so it hung to the floor. "Hannah." "What?" "You stay quiet, you hear?" "I hear you." He stood up, and he was halfway out of the bedroom when her voice stopped him. "Big Cal." "Yeah. The older McRae. If it's him, he's left-handed. He draws cross-body. It looks slow, but it ain't." "Got it." "And his name's Cyrus. The little one's called Toby." "Got it." "Big Cal." "What, Hannah?" A small, tight pause. "Don't get killed." He almost smiled. "No, ma'am." He walked out into the main room of the cabin. He set his rifle just behind the door, leaning against the wall, where he could reach it without taking a step. He took the apron Rose used to wear off the peg and tied it around his waist and floured his hands at the kitchen counter like he'd been making biscuits. He put a battered tin pot of beans on the stove for smell. He wiped his hands on the apron and walked out onto the porch just as the riders came around the bend in the road. 2 men. Big bay horse and a smaller dun. Caleb stood on his own porch with his thumbs hooked into the strings of his apron and waited for them to come to him. The taller one was in front, yellow mustache, a pale ridge of scar tissue running up the right side of his neck and disappearing into his collar. Caleb's gut tightened, but his face did not. "Afternoon, fellas. Afternoon." The tall man reined up about 10 feet from the porch. He didn't get down. The little one behind him also stayed mounted, his eyes flicking over the corral, the cabin, the smoke from the chimney. "You Caleb McGregor?" "I am." "I'm Cyrus McRae. This here's my brother Toby. We're out of Dry Creek." "Long way from Dry Creek." "It is. We're looking for a man." "Lots of men in the world." Cyrus McRae's mouth tightened just a hair. "This one's a partner of ours. Goes by Pike. Tall fella, 6 foot, missing the top joint of his left ring finger. Rode out yesterday morning on a black gelding with a white blaze. He was supposed to meet us back at the South Fork by sundown. He didn't." "You see him?" "Can't say I have." "You sure?" "I'm sure. I've been on this place since yesterday morning. Ain't seen any black gelding. Ain't seen any tall fella with a missing finger. Just been me and the cattle." Cyrus McRae looked at him for a long moment. His pale eyes didn't blink. "You got any other folks on the place?" "No, sir." "Live alone, do you?" "I do. My wife passed on 2 years back." That landed in the air between them and sat there for a beat. "My condolences." "Appreciate it." "Mind if we water our horses at your trough?" "Help yourselves." Cyrus dismounted slow. The little one Toby stayed on his horse. His hand was real close to the butt of his pistol, and he didn't think Caleb was watching. But Caleb was watching. Cyrus led his bay over to the trough. He didn't look at Caleb while he did it. He looked at the cabin, the corral, the ground around the corral. "That's a fine-looking dun in your corral there, Mr. McGregor." Caleb's breath caught for half a second. Pike's horse. He'd brought it back in the dark and turned it in with his own, and not had time yet to do anything else with it. "She's a new one. Picked her up off a drifter passed through 3 weeks back. Man had to sell her off 'cause he got himself in trouble in Fort Worth." "That's so." "That's so. You got a bill of sale?" "Somewhere." Caleb scratched at his jaw. "Couldn't find it for you right this minute, I expect." "It's around." Cyrus McRae's bay drank from the trough. Toby's dun stamped a hoof. Toby himself hadn't moved, and his hand hadn't moved away from his pistol. "Mr. McGregor." "Yes, sir?" "I notice you got a smell of coffee coming off your stove." "I do." "And beans." "And beans. Cooking for one, are you?" "Cooking for one." "Mind if I step inside and beg a cup?" The world went very quiet. Caleb could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He could hear a fly buzzing somewhere up under the eaves. He could hear very faintly the breath of a woman lying flat on her belly under his bed in the next room with a pistol cocked in her hand. He smiled his slow, easy smile. "Mr. McRae, I'm going to have to say no to that, and I'll tell you why. My wife died in that cabin 2 years past. She died slow and she died ugly, and I have not let another living soul cross that threshold since the day I carried her body out. Not the preacher, not my own brother who rode down from Kansas to sit with me, not nobody. It is a private place and it is gonna stay private. But I will be glad to bring you a cup out here onto the porch if you'll wait." Cyrus McRae stared at him. It was the longest 5 seconds of Caleb's life. "That's all right," Cyrus said at last. "We got coffee on our own fire. We ought to get back to it." "Suit yourself." Cyrus mounted up slow. He sat his bay for a moment and looked at Caleb, and Caleb looked back at him, and neither of them blinked. "Mr. McGregor?" "Yes, sir." "If our man Pike turns up around here, or if you happen to recall having seen him, you'd ride into Dry Creek and you'd find me at the Jenkins Ranch and you'd let me know about it, wouldn't you?" "I'd surely consider it." You'd more than consider it? I'd surely more than consider it. Cyrus McRae nodded once. Have a good summer evening, Mr. McGregor. You too, Mr. McRae. The two riders turned and rode out. Caleb stood on his porch and watched them all the way down the road until they went around the bend by the cottonwood. And then he stood there a full minute longer, because he could not be sure they weren't watching the cabin from the trees on the far ridge. When he walked back inside, his knees were shaking. Hannah. I'm here. They're gone. Are they gone, or did they just ride out of sight? They rode out of sight. Then I'm staying under here a while. Yes, ma'am. He sat down at the kitchen table because he didn't trust his legs to keep him standing. After a minute, he heard her voice from under the bed. Big Cal. Yes. You said summer evening. I did. That ain't the word we said. I know it. I almost said summer. Came up in my mouth fast. You scared me half to death. I scared myself half to death. A long silence. Big Cal. Yes, Hannah. He saw the dun. I know it. He saw it, and he made you a story about it, and he watched your face while you told it back to him. I know it. He didn't believe you. I know it. He's coming back. I know it. She was quiet a long moment. How long we got? Caleb stared at the wall across from him. The wall where Rose's shawl still hung on its peg. We got till he gets to a telegraph and sends a wire to Walter Jenkins in Fort Worth, he said. Walter wires back. They figure out how they want to handle it. Then they come back. Or they come back with more men and they don't ask to come inside next time. How long, Big Cal? Day. Maybe a day and a half. A long, slow breath from under the bed. Big Cal. Hannah. Help me out from under here. He went and lifted her out, careful of her ribs. He set her on the edge of the bed. Her good hand still had the pistol in it, white-knuckled, and he had to gently work her fingers loose from the grip before he could set it aside. Her good eye was wet. Hannah. It ain't 5 sunsets anymore, is it? No, ma'am, it ain't. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. She closed her eye. A tear ran down the side of her face that wasn't bruised into the pillow. May's been counting sunsets, Big Cal. She told me she would. She's been sitting at her bedroom window every night watching the sun go down and counting on her fingers. 5 more, 4 more, 3 more. Hannah. I told her 7 sunsets. She's only had 2. Hannah, listen to me. I told her. Hannah. He sat down on the edge of the bed and he took her good hand in both of his, careful of her broken one. His big, rough palms swallowed up her small one whole. Listen to me. She's gonna get her aunt back. You hear me? I am telling you right now, on my wife's grave, she is gonna get her aunt back. We are riding tomorrow, you and me, before sunup. We are riding to that ranch, and we are getting that book, and we are getting that child, and we are riding back out. You understand? She opened her good eye and looked at him. You said tomorrow. I said tomorrow. Big Cal, I can't sit a horse. You don't have to. I got Pike's wagon rig out in the lean-to behind the smokehouse. I'm gonna hitch it to the dun before sundown. You're gonna lay in the bed of it on a mat of blankets, and you ain't gonna sit up, and you ain't gonna lift a finger. I'm gonna drive. You're gonna drive a wagon up to Walter Jenkins's ranch, in the middle of the night, with the lamp out. Coming up the back way through the kitchen house road, the one the Mexicans use. You're gonna tell me how to get there. You're gonna tell me everything. Every fence post, every dog, every place a man's likely to be standing watch. Her hand tightened on his. You'd do that. I'd do that. You'd do that for a woman you met yesterday. He looked at her for a long beat. The long dust-colored afternoon light was coming in through the window now, and it touched the corner of her mouth, the unbruised corner where a smile was trying to start and not quite making it. Hannah Boone, he said. I ain't doing it for a woman I met yesterday. Then what are you doing it for? I'm doing it for an 11-year-old girl I never laid eyes on who's sitting at a window 2 days' ride from here counting sunsets on her fingers, and who is gonna get her aunt back if it kills me. That's what I'm doing it for. Hannah Boone made a small sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob, and she squeezed his hand so hard with her one good hand that he could feel the bones of her fingers shake. He sat with her on the edge of the bed for a long moment, holding her hand, neither of them talking. Outside somewhere down the South Road, two riders were riding hard for the nearest telegraph office in a town called Holloway, 26 miles off, which they could reach by midnight if they pushed the horses. And in Fort Worth, in a hotel room paid for with his own dirty money, a man named Walter Jenkins was sitting down to a steak dinner with a cattle buyer and laughing at something the cattle buyer had said, and not knowing yet that his world was about to turn over. But Caleb McGregor knew, and Hannah Boone knew, and in the corral behind the cabin, a black and white dun, who used to belong to a dead man named Pike, lifted her head ears forward and looked off down the South Road, where her old riders had gone, and made a low, unhappy sound in her throat that nobody inside the cabin heard. Caleb worked through the night by the light of a single lantern hung from a peg in the lean-to, and he did not allow himself to feel tired. The wagon was Pike's. It was a low buckboard with a slatted bed, the kind a man used for hauling small loads down rough country, and Caleb had pulled it out from under a tarp behind the smokehouse, where he'd left it after burying its old owner. He laid down a quilt across the bed, then a thicker wool blanket, then the straw-tick mattress off Rose's old trundle bed, then another quilt over that. He laid Hannah's pistol on top of the quilt wrapped in a clean rag. He went back inside. "Hannah, I'm awake." "You've been awake all night." "So have you." He sat on the edge of the bed. "I need to know everything, Hannah. Now, before we go. I need the ranch in my head like I built it myself." She breathed out careful around her ribs. "Sit down then." "I am sitting down." "Get a piece of paper." He had one ready in his shirt pocket. He pulled out the stub of pencil. "Go." She talked for the better part of an hour. The road in from the south was watched by a man named Reuben, who sat in a chair on the porch of a line shack with a Winchester across his knees and a bottle of mezcal under his chair. He drank steady from sundown to about 3 in the morning, and then he slept hard till dawn. The road in from the east was watched by a kid named Jess, who stayed sober, but who could be talked past by anyone who claimed to have business with the foreman. The road in from the north, the Kitchen House Road, the one the Mexicans used to bring in vegetables and bread from the Salazar place 6 miles up, wasn't watched at all, because Walter didn't think of the Mexicans as people who could betray him. "That's the way we go in," Caleb said. "That's the way we go in." "Where do I leave the wagon?" 200 yards short of the kitchen yard, there's a stand of mesquite. Old wagon trace pulls off to the left. You park it there. You walk in. And the kitchen house. The kitchen house is its own building, 20 paces from the main house. The cellar door is on the back side away from the main house. You go down 6 stone steps. The cellar is small, maybe 10 feet by 12. Apple barrels along the right-hand wall, 4 of them. The third row up from the floor, 4th stone in from the corner under the apple barrels. Little scratch, shaped like a bird like I said. And May's window. A long pause. May's window is on the 2nd floor of the main house, east side, 3rd from the corner. She'll have a candle in it. You're sure? I'm sure, Big Cal. She's been counting sunsets. She'll have a candle. Hannah, there's a thing I gotta ask. Ask. What if there ain't a candle? She didn't answer for a long time. Then I climb the trellis up the east wall, and I look in the window myself. Hannah, you can't climb a trellis with 4 broke ribs. Then you climb it. Hannah, then you climb it, Big Cal, because we are not leaving that ranch without that child. We are not. I will crawl up that wall on my belly before I leave that ranch without that child. He was quiet a moment. All right, Hannah. All right. All right. He stood up. He pulled his coat down off the peg and shrugged into it. He took up his rifle and laid it across the kitchen table, and he laid out 2 boxes of cartridges beside it, and he laid Pike's pistol, the one he'd taken off the body, before he buried it beside the cartridges. Hannah. I'm gonna carry you out to the wagon now. All right. He gathered her up careful as he'd ever been with anything in his life. She was light. Lighter even than the day before. He carried her out into the dark and laid her down in the wagon bed on the straw tick, and he tucked the quilt up around her chin, and she made a small sound when her ribs settled, but she didn't cry out. He laid the pistol next to her good hand. "You touch that," he said. "For any reason at all, you don't think twice." "I won't." He climbed up onto the seat. He slapped the reins gentle against the dun's rump. The mare moved out slow and easy, and the wagon rolled out of the yard and onto the north road, and the only sound in the warm summer dark was the quiet creak of the axles and the distant complaint of cicadas. They drove for 2 hours without speaking. The moon was 3/4 full and high enough to see by, and Caleb kept the dun at a walk. He didn't want a fast hoofbeat carrying across the still air. Twice he heard horses on the road south of them, and his hand tightened on the reins, but each time the sound passed and faded. After a while, Hannah's voice came up soft from the wagon bed. "Big Cal." "Yes, Hannah." "I want to tell you about Sarah." "All right. Because if something happens to me up at that ranch, I want somebody else in the world to know. Hannah, ain't nothing gonna happen to you. Big Cal, I want you to know." He breathed out. "Tell me." She told him. Sarah was the older sister by 3 years. Sarah was the brave one, the loud one, the one who climbed onto barn roofs and rode horses bareback and told their daddy to his face when he'd had too much whiskey. Sarah married a young Texas Ranger named Tom Hollis when she was 19. Tom Hollis got himself shot dead by a horse thief outside Lubbock when Sarah was 23 and pregnant with May. And then Walter Jenkins came around. Yes. He courted her. He didn't court her. He found her. She was a young widow with a baby and 40 acres of dry land Tom had bought before he died, and Walter Jenkins came around and made promises and offered her a roof, and she was tired, Big Cal. She was so tired. And he was handsome then. He was handsome and soft-spoken, and he had a fine house, and he said all the right things, and she married him, and within a year she knew. Knew what? Knew what he was. The wagon creaked along. "She wrote me letters," Hannah said, "from the ranch, once a month regular. And the letters started out cheerful, and then they got shorter, and then there was a year where I didn't get one at all, and then I got one that said, 'Hannah, I am scared. I think he hits me when I am asleep, and I cannot remember it in the morning. Hannah, I think there is something wrong with my mind. Or there is something wrong with him. Hannah, please come.' And I packed a bag that same night, and I started for Texas. Did you get there in time?" "I did not." The dun's hooves on the dry road, the cicadas, nothing else. "She fell down the stairs the night before I arrived. By the time my stage pulled into Dry Creek, she was already in the ground. Walter had buried her quick. He said it was not fit for viewing. He said it would have hurt me to see her." "Hannah, and I went up to the ranch and I sat in his parlor and I drank his coffee and I looked at that man's face, and I knew the way you know a snake is a snake, Big Cal. I sat there and I drank his coffee and I let him see me cry, because that is what he expected to see. But inside my own head, I was already deciding what I was going to do. Already. That same afternoon. I was already deciding. You decided to marry him. I decided to marry him. Hannah. There was no other way to get to her, Big Cal. There was no other way the law would let me. I tried. I went to a lawyer in Fort Worth. He told me a stepfather's claim on a child was stronger than an aunt's no matter what. He told me, unless Walter gave May up willingly, I had no door. And Walter would never give her up. She was the rope he had on me. He knew I would come for her. He knew the moment I walked into his parlor that I was going to come for her, and he set the trap accordingly. By marrying you. By marrying me. 2 birds with 1 stone. He got the dead wife's pretty sister, which his pride wanted. And he got the only person who might have made trouble for him about Sarah's death sleeping in his own house under his thumb. He thought he was the smartest man in 3 counties. Hannah. Yes. When you copied that book. Yes. You wasn't just copying it to take to a lawman, were you? A long, long silence. No, Big Cal, I wasn't. What was you copying it for? I was copying it because once I had May out, and once I had the book, I was going to mail certain pages of that book to certain people in 5 different towns. And I was going to ruin him. I was going to take everything he had ever stolen and built and lied for, and I was going to set a match to it from 1,000 miles away, and I was going to watch from somewhere safe while it burned. That is what I was going to do, Big Cal. And I am going to do it still. He drove a long minute without speaking. Hannah Boone. Yes. You are the most dangerous woman I have ever met in my life. A small dry sound came up out of the wagon bed. It might have been a laugh. Big Cal. Yes. You ain't seen dangerous yet. They reached the outskirts of the Jenkins Range a little before 3 in the morning. Caleb knew it before Hannah told him. The country had been changing for the last half hour. The fence posts went from rough cedar to milled lumber, and then there started to be the long straight runs of 3-strand wire that no small homesteader could afford. Fat cattle in the moonlight, where on the road south the cattle had been lean and longhorn. This was money country. This was Walter Jenkins country. Slow up. He slowed up. There's a turnoff coming on your left. Old wagon trace. Looks like nothing. Take it. He took it. The trace was barely a track. Mesquite on both sides. The dun didn't like it. She stepped wary, and her ears went back. Caleb kept her at a walk and let her work her way through. 200 yards, you said. 200 yards. He counted off the dun's strides under his breath. When he reckoned they were close, he pulled up. Here. Pull her in tight against the mesquite, so the wagon don't sit out plain. He did. He set the brake. He climbed down. He went around to the back of the wagon. Hannah was already trying to sit up. Hannah, no. I'm coming with you. Hannah? I'm coming with you, Big Cal. I have to. Hannah, you can't walk. I can walk if you help me. Hannah. Big Cal. Her good eye fixed on him in the moonlight, and he couldn't see the bruise on the other side, just that one fierce gray-green eye. If May sees you come through that window without me, and a strange big man tries to take her out of her bed, she will scream so loud she will wake every man on this ranch. Do you understand? She does not know you. She knows me. I have to be there. He stood in the dark with one hand on the rail of the wagon and the other in a fist at his side. Big Cal? Yes, Hannah. Help me down. He helped her down. She nearly went to her knees when her feet touched the ground. He caught her under the arms and held her up, and he felt her whole body shake against his, and he heard the small choked sound she made when her ribs took the weight, and he felt something inside himself harden into a shape it had never been before. Walk with me, she whispered. Just slow. Just lean on me. She put her good arm around his waist as far as it would go, which wasn't far given his bulk, and she leaned into his side, and he half carried her up the trace toward the dim outline of the ranch buildings on the rise ahead. They came up to the edge of the kitchen yard, and he stopped them in the cover of an old cottonwood. Hannah. Yes. There's a light on in the kitchen house. A long pause. There ain't supposed to be a light in the kitchen house at 3 in the morning? No. She breathed slow and shallow. Could be Consuela. Who's Consuela? The cook. The housekeeper. She's been there 20 years. She kept May alive after Sarah died. Is she with us, Hannah, or against us? She's with May, whatever that means. I never knew if it meant with me too. I never trusted it enough to test. Then we don't test it tonight. Big Cal. We don't test it tonight, Hannah. We don't go through the kitchen. We go around it. We come up on May's window from the east. If the window's lit and the candle's in it, we go in that way, and we take her, and then I go back for the book on my own. Big Cal, I am not leaving without that book. You are if I have to throw you over my shoulder, Hannah Boone. She looked at him in the dark. He could feel her looking. All right, she said at last. May 1st. May 1st. They moved. He half carried her around the backside of the kitchen house, keeping the building between themselves and the bunkhouse where the hands slept. A dog barked once somewhere off to the west. They froze. The bark didn't come again. They reached the east side of the main house. Caleb tipped his head back and looked up. 3 windows. The third from the corner. There was no candle. Hannah made a small sound against his side that wasn't quite a word. Hannah. There should be a candle. I know it. Big Cal. There should be a candle. She would have a candle. She would not forget to have a candle. Hannah, listen to me. She would not forget. Hannah. He took her by both shoulders and turned her toward him, slow, mindful of her ribs. He bent his head down to hers. Maybe she fell asleep. Maybe the candle burned out. Maybe she ran out of candles. She's 11 years old, Hannah. She is doing the best she can. We are going up to that window, and we are going to look in. All right. A long beat. All right. There was a wooden trellis up the east wall, just like she'd said. Climbing roses had grown up it years back, mostly dead now in the late summer dry. The trellis itself was sound. Caleb tested it with one big hand and felt it hold. Hannah, you wait here. Big Cal. You wait here. I am going up. If she's there, I will come back down and get you. If she ain't there... He stopped. If she ain't there, what? We will figure it out, Hannah. You just wait. He set her down with her back against the wall. He took off his boots and set them at her feet. In his stocking feet, he climbed the trellis as quiet as a 300-pound man can climb anything. Which is not very quiet, but the night was full of cicadas and crickets and the wind in the cottonwoods, and the trellis was on the east side away from the bunkhouse. He reached the window. It was open 4 inches at the bottom. He bent his head and looked in. The room was dark. He waited for his eye to adjust. A small bed against the far wall. White sheets in the moonlight that came in through the window. Empty. Empty. He held himself very still on the trellis. He looked again. The covers were thrown back, not made. A nightgown lay on the floor beside the bed. A pair of small shoes by the door. He climbed down. Hannah looked up at him from where she sat against the wall, and she saw it on his face before he said a word. Big Cal. She ain't there, Hannah. Where is she? I don't know. Big Cal. Hannah, listen to me. The bed's been slept in. The covers are throwed back. Her clothes is on the floor. She ain't been took, Hannah. She got up and she left that room. Why would she leave that room? I don't know. Big Cal, why would she leave that room? He pulled his boots back on. His hands were shaking. He didn't let her see. Hannah. The kitchen house light. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Big Cal. Yeah. Big Cal. Consuela would not. She would not. If she had May down there, it would be because something was wrong. It would be because May was sick or scared, or Walter had... She stopped. What? Walter. What about him, Hannah? She closed her good eye. He told me the morning he left for Fort Worth. He said, Hannah, you take care of yourself while I'm gone. You take real good care of yourself. You especially take good care not to do anything foolish. And I thought it was just him being him. But what, Hannah? What if he didn't go to Fort Worth? The whole world went still. Hannah. What if he never went? What if he set off down the road and turned around at the river? What if he's been here the whole time, watching? Hannah, the McRae's was hunting pike. They wasn't acting like men who knew where pike was. Their boss didn't know either. Or they was acting. Or he sent them out to make it look like he didn't know. Or he was already suspicious, and he set the whole thing up to see who would help me. Big Cal. He is smarter than a snake. He is smarter than us. He is so much smarter than us. Caleb's mind went very fast and very cold. Hannah, stay here. Big Cal, stay here, against this wall, with the pistol. If I am not back in 10 minutes, you crawl back to that wagon and you get the done moving south. You don't wait for me. Big Cal, I am not leaving you. You are if I tell you to. Hannah Boone, you swore to me you'd do what I said. You swore to me at the creek. Did you mean it or did you not? A long beat, tears in her eye. I meant it. Then 10 minutes. 10 minutes. He went. He moved low and slow along the wall of the main house, keeping in the shadow, and he came around the front corner and worked his way across the open yard toward the kitchen house 20 paces away, with the warm yellow light still glowing in its one back window. His rifle was in his hands. His thumb was on the hammer. His big body felt strangely small. He had not felt small in a long time. He came up alongside the kitchen house, and he set his back against the wall, and he listened. A voice, soft. A woman's voice. Spanish, then English, then Spanish again. Mija. Mija está bien. Está bien, mija. Cala cala. A child's voice. Crying. Caleb closed his eyes for a half-second. He moved to the back door of the kitchen house. He tried the latch with one finger. It lifted. The door swung in. A small kitchen. A long pine table. A woman in a black dress and a white apron sitting on a chair beside the stove. A small girl in a white nightgown curled in her lap. The girl's face was buried in the woman's shoulder. The woman was rocking her slow, the way you rock a child who has had a bad dream and is having trouble coming out of it. The woman looked up. She saw a 300-pound stranger filling her doorway with a rifle in his hands. She did not scream. She did not move. She looked at Caleb's face for one long second, and then she looked past him into the dark behind him, and her own face changed. "Senora Hannah," she whispered. "Hannah's outside," Caleb said low. "She's hurt. She can't walk well. She sent me." The woman Consuela, it had to be. Consuela closed her eyes for a moment, and her lips moved without sound, and Caleb realized she was praying. The little girl in her lap hadn't lifted her head. "Mija," Consuela said. "Mija, mira, mira mi amor. Aunt Hannah ha venido." The little girl's head came up. She had Hannah's eyes, the same gray-green. They were red and swollen from crying. "Aunt Hannah is here," she whispered. "She's outside, sweetheart," Caleb said. "She's hurt some, but she's here." May looked at him for a long moment with an expression that was not a child's expression. It was the expression of a person who had decided a long time ago not to believe anything until she could touch it with her own hands. "Where outside?" she said. "East wall of your house. Sitting against the wall." "Take me to her." "Mija, your feet. Take me to her right now," May said, and she slid down off Consuela's lap onto the bare wood floor in her bare feet, and she took Caleb's free hand in both of her small ones, and her grip was harder than a child's grip should be. "Take me to her right now, please, sir. Please. May, listen to me. We got to be quiet." "I will be quiet. I have been quiet for 3 years. I can be quiet." Caleb looked at Consuela. "Where is Walter?" Consuela's face went hard. "He came back yesterday, senor." The world stopped. "He came back yesterday afternoon. He told the men he had forgotten a paper. He took it from his study, and he went out again, and the men think he is gone. But, senor, he did not ride out again. I heard the horse go, and I went to the window, and the saddle was empty. The horse went out without him. He is somewhere on this ranch. I do not know where. I have been hiding the child since dark." Caleb stared at her. "Why?" "Because he came into her room 2 nights ago, senor. After the lady Hannah ran. He came into her room and he sat on her bed and he asked her where her aunt had gone, and the child said she did not know, and he asked her again, and he—" Consuela's voice broke. "And he what?" Caleb said quietly. "He hurt her, senor. He hurt her to make her tell. And she did not tell him. And tonight when she was sleeping, she had a dream, and she screamed, and I was afraid he would hear, and I brought her here to the kitchen, because the kitchen is far from his study, and I keep a fire, and I could rock her quiet. And I have been afraid every minute. Every minute, senor." May's small hand was still in Caleb's. He looked down at it. There was a long, half-healed welt across the back of her wrist, the kind a man left when he gripped a child too hard twisting. Caleb did not let himself look at it for more than a second, because if he looked at it for more than a second, he was going to put his rifle through the wall. "Consuela." "Yes, senor." "There is a book that Hannah hid in the cellar of this house, behind a stone." A pause. "I know about the book, senor." "You know about it." I helped her hide it. Will you get it for me right now? Si, señor. Consuela was up and out the door to the cellar in a flash of black skirt. Caleb heard her boots on the stone steps going down. Sir? May whispered. Yes, ma'am. Are you going to take us away? He went down on one knee slow, so he was eye to eye with her. He laid the rifle across his thigh. Yes, ma'am. You and Aunt Hannah. Me and Aunt Hannah. Will my stepdaddy come after us? He will try. Will he catch us? He looked at her. Her gray-green eyes that were Hannah's eyes, that were probably also Sarah's eyes. The half-healed welt on her wrist. Her small bare feet on the cold floor. No, ma'am, he said. He will not. May nodded once, slow and grave. All right, she said. Consuela's boots came back up the stone steps. She had a leather-wrapped bundle the size of a small Bible in her hands. She put it into Caleb's free hand. It is the book, señor. You're sure? I am sure. I helped her wrap it myself. Consuela, you have to come with us. You can't stay here. Señor, I have a son in Laredo. I can be at Laredo in 3 days. I have money put aside. You take the lady and the niña. I will be gone by morning. He will not know which way any of us went. Consuela? Go, señor. Váyanse. Váyanse ahora. He stood. He picked up May in his free arm. She weighed almost nothing. This small, hard child. And he tucked the leather book inside his coat against his ribs. And he went out the door of the kitchen house, at the fastest walk a 300-pound man can manage, carrying a child and a rifle. Around the corner. Across the open. Along the wall of the main house. Hannah was where he'd left her. Her head was up. Her good eye was watching for him. When she saw what he had in his arms, she made a sound he would remember for the rest of his life. May was already squirming to be put down. He set her on her feet gentle, and she ran the last 3 steps and dropped to her knees beside Hannah and put her arms around Hannah's neck so hard that Hannah gasped from her ribs and didn't make a single sound of complaint. Aunt Hannah! May baby, May. You came. I came. I came, baby. I came back for you. He hurt me, Aunt Hannah. He hurt me real bad. I know, baby, I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm here now. Caleb stood over them with the rifle in one hand and the green ledger pressed against his ribs under his coat, and he gave them 5 seconds. That was all the world had to give them. Hannah? Yes. He's on the property. He never left. Her good eye came up to his. Big Cal? We gotta go. Now. Right now. She didn't argue. He picked May up in one arm. He bent and got Hannah under her good arm with the other, and she got herself up onto her feet by some act of will he could not name. And the 3 of them moved together down the east wall, around the back of the kitchen house, across the open behind the cottonwood, and into the dark of the trace where the wagon waited. He set May in the bed of the wagon. He laid Hannah down beside her. May put her small arms around Hannah's neck and pressed her face into Hannah's collar and did not let go. Hannah's good hand came up and rested on the back of May's head, and there were tears running freely down both sides of Hannah's face. Now the bruised side and the unbruised side both, and she was making no sound at all. Caleb pulled the quilt up over both of them. He climbed up onto the wagon seat. He took the brake off. He clucked to the dun soft, and the dun moved out, and the wagon rolled out of the mesquite, and back onto the kitchen house road headed north, away from the main house, away from the bunkhouse, away from the man who was somewhere on this ranch in the dark, with no one knowing where. He had gone perhaps 200 yards when the first shot came from the trees behind them. The bullet went past Caleb's left ear close enough that he heard it crack the air. Get down! He yelled it into the wagon bed, and at the same instant he laid his whole weight forward on the dun's reins and slapped them hard against her rump, and the mare went from a walk to a hard trot to a flat run inside of 3 strides. The wagon bounced. Hannah cried out from her ribs. May did not make a sound, and Caleb realized with a piece of his mind that the child had pressed her face into Hannah's collar and gone perfectly still, the way a rabbit goes still when the hawk's shadow passes over. A second shot. Wood splintered off the back rail of the wagon 2 feet behind his shoulder. Hannah, You got the pistol. I got it. Don't shoot back. He's behind us in the dark and we don't know where. Just stay flat. Big Cal. Stay flat, Hannah. A third shot. This one missed wider. The shooter was moving. Running, maybe trying to keep up with the wagon on foot through the trees. Caleb did the arithmetic of it without thinking. A man on foot in Mesquite was slower than a wagon at a hard trot, but the kitchen house road bent in a long curve up ahead, and a man cutting straight across through the brush could come out the other side ahead of them. He laid the reins on the dun harder. The mare lengthened her stride. Hannah. Yeah. Tell me about the road. Right now. Quick. Curve to the right comes up in a quarter mile. Then it straightens out for 2 miles before the turn off to the Salazar place. How thick's the mesquite on the inside of the curve? Heavy. Real heavy. Then he ain't cutting across it. He's got to go around the same as us. Big Cal. What? There's another road. What? There's a Hands road that cuts across the inside of the curve. Just a horse trail. He could come out ahead of us if he's already on a horse. Caleb's gut went cold. Hannah. Was he on a horse? I didn't see him, Big Cal. I didn't see him. The fourth shot punched through the sideboard of the wagon at hip height and went out the other side. Caleb felt the wind of it across his thigh. May. She's all right. She's all right, Big Cal. She's not hit. Stay flat. He laid the reins again. The dun was at a flat gallop now, the wagon bouncing on the hard summer ruts of the road, and Caleb knew if a wheel hit the wrong rock at this speed, the whole rig would come apart, and they would be on foot with 2 wounded and a hard man somewhere in the dark behind them. The curve came up. He took it wide. The dun slid in the loose gravel on the outside and recovered, and they were around it, and on the long straight, when Caleb saw 100 yards ahead, the dim shape of a horse and rider come out of the brush on the inside of the curve and turn to face them. He pulled the dun up so hard she nearly went down on her haunches. Hannah. I see him. Get under the seat. Get May under the seat. Right now. He could hear her dragging the child up with her one good arm, and May was helping climbing forward over the boards, and they crammed themselves down into the footwell in front of the wagon seat where the boards would shield them from the front. The rider was walking his horse forward at an easy pace. He had a rifle laid across his pommel. He was not in a hurry. Mr. McGregor. The voice came across the moonlit road, soft and pleasant, the voice of a man who'd been raised to speak gently to women in parlors. Caleb had never heard Walter Jenkins speak before in his life. He knew the voice anyway. There was no mistaking that voice once you had heard the particular flat thing that ran underneath it. Mr. Jenkins. You know my name. I do. That saves us some time. The rider walked his horse closer, 20 yards, 15. Stop right there, Mr. Jenkins. Why would I do that, Mr. McGregor? Because I have got a rifle in my hands, and I will use it, and you do not want me to use it. Walter Jenkins reined his horse in. He sat his saddle easy, the rifle still across his pommel, his hands resting loose on it. Mr. McGregor, may I tell you what I think is in the back of your wagon? You may say whatever you please. It does not change what I will do if you come closer. I think you have my wife in the back of that wagon. And I think you have a child in the back of that wagon who is not your child and who is not anything to you but who is my legal stepdaughter. Now, sir, I do not know how you came to be involved in this matter. I do not know if my wife told you a sad story or if you came up with notions of your own. But I will tell you this. Whatever she told you is a lie. She is not in her right mind. She has not been in her right mind since her sister passed, and her sister passed in a tragic way that broke something in my wife. The doctor in Dry Creek will tell you the same. The judge will tell you the same. Every soul who has ever met her will tell you the same. She is sick, Mr. McGregor. She has run off from me because she is sick, and now she has stolen a child from her bed in the middle of the night because she is sick, and you have been brought into a tragic situation by a woman who does not know what she is doing. Now, sir, he paused. If you turn that wagon around and you come back with me to the house, I will see to it that you ride away tonight with no harm done. I will put it down to a kind man helping a woman in distress. I will not press a charge. You will go home and you will sleep in your own bed tomorrow night." Caleb did not lower the rifle. "Mr. Jenkins?" "Yes, Mr. McGregor. I have spent the last day and a half with that woman in the back of my wagon. I have heard her breathing, and I have heard her sleeping, and I have heard her tell me things about her sister and her niece and the man she married. And I will tell you, sir, in all honesty, that woman is the most clear-minded woman I have met in my life. There is nothing wrong with her mind. The thing that is wrong here is in your saddle, Mr. Jenkins, and it is pointing a rifle at me from 15 yards. A long pause. "Mr. McGregor?" "Yes." "Is the green book in that wagon?" The world went very still. "What green book, Mr. Jenkins?" "The green book, Mr. McGregor." "I do not know what you mean." A small, soft laugh. "You are a poor liar, sir. It is one of the things I respect about you. Most men I deal with are good liars. You are not. Now, I will tell you the truth. If the green book is in that wagon, then this conversation has changed. If the green book is not in that wagon, then we can perhaps still do business. So I will ask you one more time, and I will ask you to tell me the truth. It ain't in the wagon." "Mr. McGregor, it ain't in the wagon. It's in the cellar of the kitchen house, behind a stone. Third row up, fourth in from the corner under the apple barrels, marked with a little scratch shaped like a bird." A pause. "That is very specific, Mr. McGregor. She told me where it was hid. She wanted me to get it. I did not. I went straight to the child instead because the child was what she cared about most. I figured I could come back for the book some other day." Another pause. Now that Walter Jenkins said quietly, "is interesting. It's the truth. Is it?" "It is. Mr. McGregor, I am going to ride my horse around behind your wagon and I am going to look in the wagon bed myself, and you are not going to do anything foolish, because I will tell you another truth. There are 3 more of my men in the brush behind you right now. I rode out ahead because I am the fastest. They are perhaps 2 minutes back. If a shot is fired up here, those men come running, and we will have a different kind of conversation. Do you understand?" Caleb's mind was running fast and cold. "I understand." "Good." Walter Jenkins clucked to his horse. The horse stepped forward. Walter started to walk it around the right side of Caleb's wagon, slow, his rifle still across his pommel, but his free hand now very near the butt of it. He came even with the wagon seat. His face was 3 feet from Caleb's. In the moonlight, he was younger than Caleb had pictured him, maybe 40, smooth-shaven, fine-featured, the kind of face that had been told all its life it was handsome. His eyes were pale, and they did not quite track together. The left one was a half-second behind the right. "Mr. McGregor," he said softly, conversational, "you are a very large man." "I am." "You are larger than I expected." "Folks tell me that. It is going to make this awkward." He started to swing the rifle up. 2 things happened at once. The first was that Hannah Boone, broken-ribbed half-blind, who could not sit up unaided, who Caleb had told to stay flat under the seat board, came up out of the footwell of the wagon with the pistol in her good hand and put a bullet through Walter Jenkins's right shoulder from a range of 4 feet. The second was that Caleb, who had been waiting for any motion at all from that rifle, brought the butt of his own rifle around in a hard short arc and caught Walter Jenkins across the side of the head with it, and Walter Jenkins went sideways out of his saddle and hit the ground in a heap. His horse spooked and ran. His rifle clattered into the dust. Caleb was off the wagon seat before Walter's body had finished settling. He kicked the rifle into the brush. He stood over the man with his own rifle leveled. Walter Jenkins was breathing. He was bleeding from the shoulder and from the side of his head where the rifle butt had opened the scalp. His eyes were open and they were fixed on Caleb's face, and they were not afraid. "Mr. McGregor," he said, thick-tongued but clear, "that was not a wise thing your wife just did." "She ain't my wife. She will be soon enough the way you look at her." Caleb did not answer. "Mr. McGregor, my men will be here in 90 seconds. Then we got 90 seconds. You cannot take the child. The law is on my side. Whatever you do tonight, the law will come for you tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. I will spend every dollar I own. I will spend it on judges, and I will spend it on Pinkertons, and I will spend it on bounty men, and you will not have one peaceful night for the rest of your life. I want you to understand that. I want you to understand it in your bones. There is no version of this story that ends with you and that woman and that child in a quiet house somewhere. That story does not exist. I will not let it exist. Caleb looked down at him. He thought about the book inside his coat. He thought about the names in it. He thought about the federal marshal in El Paso, and the judge in Dry Creek County, and the Pinkertons, who took retainer money from men like Walter Jenkins. He thought about Sarah Boone falling down a flight of stairs in this man's house. He thought about the welt on the back of an 11-year-old child's wrist. "Hannah," he said. "Yes. Hand me the pistol." There was a beat. "Big Cal, hand me the pistol." "Big Cal, listen to me. Listen. If you do that, every lawman in 3 states will hunt us forever. They will hunt May forever. He is a rich man, Big Cal. A rich man dead at the side of a road, and a poor man and a bruised woman and a stolen child in a wagon. Big Cal." He stood there. He stood there with the rifle leveled at Walter Jenkins's chest, and he felt the want of it move through him like a hot wind through dry grass, and he felt it all the way down to his fingers, and he saw with absolute clarity how easy it would be and how much of the world's misery would end if he simply pulled. "Big Cal," a small voice from the wagon, not Hannah's. "Mr. May." She had pulled herself up to the wagon seat. Her small hands were on the back rail. She was looking at him. "Mr. Don't." He did not look away from Walter Jenkins. "Why not, sweetheart?" "Because you said you weren't going to hurt anybody. You said you were going to take us away. You didn't say you were going to hurt anybody." He stood there for one long second. "May." "Yes." "Do you want to know what kind of man your stepdaddy is?" "I know what kind of man he is." "Then you know why I might want to do this." "I know why. I want to do it too. But you said you wouldn't. And if you do it, you won't be the man you said you were. And I want you to be the man you said you were, mister. Please." The world hung there. Caleb breathed out slow and lowered the rifle. He bent down. He took Walter Jenkins by the front of his coat and lifted him half up off the ground with one hand, and he brought his face very close to Walter Jenkins's face. "You listen to me, Mr. Jenkins." "I am listening, Mr. McGregor. I am not going to kill you tonight. The child asked me not to, so I am not going to. But I am going to tell you something, and I want you to remember it every morning when you wake up for the rest of your life. There is a green book. It is real. It is in this wagon, and it is going to a place where you cannot reach it. Tomorrow morning, a copy of 3 pages out of that book will be in the hands of the editor of the Fort Worth Gazette. The day after that, 3 more pages will go to the federal court in El Paso. The day after that, 3 more pages will go to a man you have paid money to in St. Louis, who is going to find out that other people now know he has been paid money. And every week after that, Mr. Jenkins, for as long as you live, 3 more pages will go somewhere, until the book is empty. Do you understand me?" Walter Jenkins looked at him and did not speak. "Do you understand me, Mr. Jenkins?" "I understand you. You will not send Pinkertons. You will not send bounty men. You will not send judges. Because every man you send is 1 more page that goes out the next morning. You will sit in your big house, and you will be a small man in it, and you will wait. Do you understand?" "I understand. And if I ever hear that 1 finger has been laid on Consuela in Laredo, or on any other soul who helped this woman or this child, I will come to your house myself, Mr. Jenkins, and I will not bring a child with me to ask me to be merciful. Do you understand?" "I understand." Caleb dropped him. Walter Jenkins fell back into the dust and did not get up. Caleb turned and climbed up onto the wagon seat. Hannah was already half collapsed against the seat board, her face gray, her good hand still wrapped around the pistol, but trembling now in a way it had not trembled before. May had her arm around Hannah's shoulders, holding her up. "Big Cal." "I know." Big Cal, his men. I know it. Hold on. He took up the reins and slapped them. The dun, who had been standing nervous and lathered, jumped forward into a run. The wagon went past Walter Jenkins, lying in the dust, and around him in a wide arc, and as they went past, Caleb did not look at him, but May did. The little girl looked at her stepdaddy, lying in the dirt in his own blood, and her face did not move, and she did not say a word, and she turned her face away only when the wagon had carried him out of her sight forever. They ran the dun for 2 miles. They heard horses behind them at one point, distant, the sound rising and falling on the warm air, but the horses did not seem to be gaining, and after a while Caleb realized why. The men were not coming on. They had reached their boss in the road, and they had stopped. He did not know if Walter Jenkins was telling them to follow or telling them to take him home. He did not know if Walter Jenkins was even still conscious. He did not let himself think about it. He kept the dun moving north. A few miles past the turnoff to the Salazar place, he eased her down to a trot and then to a walk because the mare was lathered white and her sides were heaving and she would founder if he did not let her breathe. He did not stop the wagon until the first gray light started to show in the east. When the dun finally stood blowing on a low rise of road, overlooking a dry creek bed with the long empty country of the Texas summer, rolling out ahead of them in the early light, Caleb set the brake and climbed down from the seat and went around to the back of the wagon. Hannah was still upright, more or less. May was still pressed against her side. Both of them had their eyes open, and neither of them had spoken in 20 minutes. Hannah. Big Cal. You shot him. I shot him. With 4 broke ribs. It was easier than walking. Caleb put one big hand on her good shoulder, careful, and he held it there. Hannah. Yes. You saved my life. You saved mine first. That makes us even. A small broken sound that was almost a laugh. That makes us even, Big Cal. May looked up at him from where she was tucked under Hannah's good arm. Her gray-green eyes were red and tired and entirely awake. Mister? My name is Caleb, sweetheart. Caleb. Or Big Cal if you like. Caleb. Yes. Where are we going? He stood there for a long moment in the early light, with one hand on Hannah's shoulder, and the dun blowing in front of him, and the long empty country stretching on before them, and the green ledger heavy inside his coat against his ribs. We're going home, sweetheart, he said. Where's home? It's a little cabin 3 days' ride south of here. It's got a stove and a bed and a corral and a creek behind it. There ain't another soul for 10 miles. We're gonna get there, and we're gonna get your aunt mended up, and we're gonna figure out the next thing after that. All right. May thought about it. All right, Caleb. All right. He climbed back up onto the wagon seat. He took up the reins. He clucked to the dun soft, and the mare moved out at a slow, steady walk into the Texas sunrise. In the wagon bed, Hannah Boone closed her good eye. Her hand found May's small hand and folded around it. She did not cry. She had cried as much as she was going to cry for a while. She just held on, and 80 miles back in the dust of the Kitchen House Road, 3 Jenkins riders were lifting their boss up onto a horse, and Walter Jenkins was conscious enough now to speak, and what he was saying very quietly through his teeth. Caleb did not know it yet. Would not know it for some time, was a single sentence repeated over and over to himself, like a man saying his prayers, and the sentence was not, I will hunt them the way a smaller man would have said it, and it was not, I will kill them the way an angrier man would have said it. The sentence was much shorter than that, and much worse, and it was, he is bluffing about the book. They reached the cabin on the 3rd day at dusk, all 3 of them half dead, and none of them speaking. Caleb pulled the dun up at the corral gate. He climbed down stiff. He went around to the wagon bed, and Hannah was unconscious, and May was awake, sitting cross-legged with Hannah's head in her lap, holding a wet rag to Hannah's forehead, the way she had been doing for the better part of 2 days. Caleb? Yes, sweetheart. She's hot. She's real hot. I know it. Help me get her inside. He carried Hannah in his arms, and May walked behind with the green ledger pressed against her chest like a Bible. and they got Hannah laid down on the bed. Caleb's wife Rose had died in, and within an hour, the fever was so high that Caleb could feel the heat of her through the blanket without touching her. "It's the ribs," he said, half to himself, half to May. "One of them broke through something inside, or the cuts on her hands went bad. Is she going to die?" He looked at the 11-year-old girl standing in his doorway, with her arms wrapped around the book that had cost her aunt half her face and 4 broken bones to copy. "No," he said, "she is not going to die, because I won't let her." He worked through the night. He boiled water and bathed her. He pulled the fever down by inches with cold cloths and willow bark tea that Rose had taught him to make. He lifted her head and made her swallow water in small sips. May fell asleep on the floor at the foot of the bed, somewhere past midnight, and Caleb threw a blanket over her and went on working. Around 3 in the morning, Hannah opened her good eye. "Big Cal." "I'm here." "Am I dying?" "No, ma'am." "You sure?" "I am sure, Hannah Boone. You did not come this far to die in my bed." "I'd be the second one." "You would not be." She closed her eye. "Big Cal." "Yes." "The pages." "What pages?" "The ledger pages. They have to go out, tomorrow. I told him they would. He is going to come." "Hannah, you ain't in shape to think about that right now." Her good eye opened again. There was a hard fire under the fever in it. "Big Cal, listen to me. He believed me about the child, and he believed me about the cellar stone. He did not believe me about the pages going out. I could see it on his face. I have seen that face for 2 years. He thinks I made it up to scare him. He is going to come." "How long?" 2 days, 3, as soon as he can ride." Caleb sat down heavy in the chair beside the bed. "Hannah." "Yes." "How do we send pages out from here? Nearest telegraph is 18 miles. Nearest post office is 26. I can't leave you. I can't leave the child. And I can't take you both with me, not in the shape you're in." A long pause. "Big Cal." "What?" "They are already out." He stared at her. "What?" "The pages, Big Cal. They went out 3 weeks ago." "Hannah, I sent them 3 weeks ago. Before I ran. I had been sending them, Big Cal, a few at a time for the last 4 months, through Consuela. She would carry the letters down to the Salazar place when she went for vegetables, and the old man Salazar would put them in his mail wagon when he went into Dry Creek for the post, and they went out from there. I had been mailing them for months. I did not tell Walter that when we were in the road. I let him believe they had not gone yet. I let him think he had time." Caleb sat there with his mouth half open. "Hannah." "I know." "You sent the pages already." "I did." "To who?" She wet her cracked lips. "Half went to a man named Captain Hollis Reyes of the Texas Rangers in Austin. He is Tom's older brother. My sister's husband's brother. He has been waiting 2 years for evidence on Walter because he believes Walter killed Sarah, but he could never prove it. The other half went to the federal court in El Paso and to the editor of the Fort Worth Gazette. Just like I told Walter the next batch would go. I told him exactly what I had already done, Big Cal, and he heard it as a future threat, because he could not imagine I had been brave enough to do it already." Caleb sat there in the chair by the bed for a long time without saying anything at all. Then he started to laugh. It came up out of him slow and rough, the laugh of a man who has not laughed in a very long time, and once it started, it would not stop, and it shook his great frame and brought tears to his eyes, and May woke up at the foot of the bed and stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "Caleb, it's all right, sweetheart." "Why are you laughing?" "Because your aunt is the smartest woman in the state of Texas, May, and I did not know it until just now." Hannah on the bed made a small dry sound that might have been a laugh of her own. It cracked into a cough. The cough turned into something worse, and Caleb stopped laughing fast and put his hand on her back and held her up while she struggled through it. And when she settled at last, there was a thin pink stain on the corner of her lip. "Hannah." "I'm all right." "You are not all right. I will be." She slept then, and Caleb did not sleep. He sat in the chair through the rest of the night with his rifle across his knees and the green ledger on the kitchen table behind him, and he watched the door, and he thought about how a man named Walter Jenkins might come up that road and what a man like that might bring with him. He thought he had 2 days, maybe 3. He had less than 1. It was just past noon the next day when the dust came up on the south road. Caleb saw it from the porch and was inside the cabin before it had risen to head height. Hannah was awake and lucid for the first time since the fever broke at dawn. May was at the kitchen table eating bread and butter, the first food she had been able to keep down in 2 days. "Hannah." "How many?" "6 riders, pushing hard." "Walter." "I can't make him out yet. Could be." She closed her good eye for a second. "Big Cal." "Yes. There is a thing I want to say to you in case there isn't time later." "Hannah, there is going to be time later." "There might not be." "There is. Hannah, listen to me. Whatever you are about to say, you save it. You save it, and you say it to me tonight when this is over by the fire with a cup of coffee in your hand. You hear me?" A long beat. "All right, Big Cal?" "All right." He turned to May. "Sweetheart." "Yes, Caleb. You know that little root cellar I showed you yesterday, out behind the smokehouse?" "Yes." "You take your aunt's pistol, and you take your aunt, and you go down there now. You shut the door behind you, and you bolt it from the inside. You don't come out until you hear my voice telling you to come out. Not anyone else's voice. Not even your aunt's. Mine. You hear me?" "Yes, Caleb." "May." "Yes. If I don't come back. If you hear shooting, and then you hear horses ride out and you don't hear me, you wait 1 full hour by counting. Then you slip out the back of the cellar and you cut south on foot through the creek bed. You walk 2 days. You come up at a place called Bluebird Crossing. You ask for a woman named Aggie Peterson. You tell her your aunt sent you. She will know what to do." "Caleb." "Yes. You're going to come back." "Yes, sweetheart. I am going to come back. But you remember what I told you, just in case." "I'll remember." He carried Hannah out the back door himself. May walked in front of them with the pistol in both small hands, held the way Hannah had taught her over the long ride south, and she opened the cellar door and went down the steps first, and Caleb laid Hannah down on a folded blanket on the cellar floor, and Hannah's good hand caught his sleeve as he turned to go. "Big Cal." "Yes. You come back." "I will come back." "Promise me." "I promise you, Hannah Boone." He shut the door over them. He heard the bolt slide home. He walked back to the cabin and took up his rifle and went out onto the porch, and the dust on the south road was close now, close enough he could count the riders. 6. He knew Walter Jenkins by the way he sat his horse before he could see his face. The riders came up to the yard and reined in 20 paces from the porch. Walter Jenkins sat his horse in the middle of them with a clean white bandage across the right side of his head and his right arm in a sling, and his left hand resting easy on his thigh near his pistol. The 5 men with him spread out a little to either side, the way men do when they have done this kind of work before. "Mr. McGregor?" "Mr. Jenkins, you are a hard man to find." "I am not hard to find. Anyone in 3 counties could have told you where I lived. You knew where I lived 3 days ago when your McRaes rode up to my porch." "That is true. I will tell you why I did not come straight here." "Tell me." "I thought about what you said in the road, Mr. McGregor. About the book. About the pages. About the editor of the Fort Worth Gazette. I rode home, and I sat in my study, and I thought about it for 1 whole day, and I came to a conclusion." "What conclusion?" "That you are a kind man, Mr. McGregor. A decent man. A man who would pick up a beaten woman from a creek and carry her home and stitch her face back together. A man like you does not have it in him to send a federal court the kind of pages that would put another man's neck in a noose. A man like you would talk about doing such a thing in the heat of a moment with a child watching and a woman bleeding. A man like you would mean it when he said it. But a man like you does not have a friend at the Fort Worth Gazette, Mr. McGregor. A man like you does not know any judges in El Paso. A man like you was bluffing, and a small part of him knew he was bluffing, and a smaller part of him hoped I would believe it. And I have decided, Mr. McGregor, that I do not believe it." Caleb stood on his porch with the rifle held loose in his hands. "Mr. Jenkins?" "Yes, sir." "Have you been to your post office today?" A pause. "What?" "Have you been to your post office today, sir, in Dry Creek? Have you stopped in at the Fort Worth Gazette? Have you sent a wire to your friend the federal judge in El Paso? Have you asked, since you decided I was bluffing, have you actually asked any of those folks?" The pause lengthened. "I do not need to ask, Mr. McGregor. You do, though, sir. You surely do. Because a man named Captain Hollis Reyes of the Texas Rangers has had pages out of your green ledger for 21 days. And the federal court at El Paso has had pages for 19. And the Fort Worth Gazette has been sitting on copy for 16 days, waiting on a corroborating witness, which they have got now, because I expect a ranger by the name of Captain Reyes wired them this morning. Hannah Boone did not threaten you in the road 3 nights ago, Mr. Jenkins. She informed you. She just let you believe it was a threat because she wanted to see what you would do." Walter Jenkins sat his horse and did not speak. "Now I am going to tell you what comes next, Mr. Jenkins." "Mr. McGregor." "Listen to me, sir." "Mr. McGregor, I have 5 men with me. You have a rifle, and you have a porch." "Listen to me, Mr. Jenkins." He listened. "Captain Reyes rode out of Austin 5 days ago with a company of 12 Rangers headed for Dry Creek. He has been at your house since yesterday morning. He has your foreman in custody. He has your study. He has your safe. He has the original of the green ledger which Consuela left him a key for. He has affidavits from 3 of your former hands who Hannah wrote letters to over the past 2 years, telling them the captain would come, and to be ready. He is at your ranch, Mr. Jenkins, and he has been there for a day and a half, and he has been waiting for you to come home. And you did not come home. You came here. And the men you have got with you, sir, those are the last 5 men in Texas who do not yet know that their boss is a wanted man." The riders to either side of Walter Jenkins had gone very still. "Mr. Jenkins," Caleb said, "tell your men to put their hands up. He is bluffing again, boys. He has done it once. He will try again. A man on a porch with a rifle telling tales. Mr. Jenkins, look at the road." He didn't want to. Caleb saw him not want to. But after a moment, Walter Jenkins turned his head slow and looked at the south road behind him. The dust was already up. A column of riders coming on hard. Maybe 2 miles out. Maybe less. The wind off them was carrying a faint sound, the sound of many hooves on hard summer ground, and a single sharper sound that was a bugle. A bugle was a thing the Rangers used riding in. Walter Jenkins turned back to the porch. His face had not changed, but the hand resting easy on his thigh near the pistol had gone white at the knuckles. "Mr. McGregor?" "Yes, sir." "How?" "Hannah Boone, Mr. Jenkins. That is how. The woman you tried to bury in a creek bed last week. She has been 3 steps ahead of you for 2 years, and she is 3 steps ahead of you now." The riders to either side of Walter Jenkins were already lifting their hands, slow and careful. They were hard men, but they were not stupid men. They had heard the bugle. Walter Jenkins did not lift his hands. "Mr. Jenkins?" "Mr. McGregor, you have one more choice in your life. You can put your hand on your pistol, and I will shoot you dead before you clear leather. Or you can lift your good hand up empty, and you can ride away from this porch with the rest of your days ahead of you, however long the Rangers decide to make them. That is the choice. There is no third one." Walter Jenkins sat very still on his horse. The dust on the road was closer now. The bugle came again. Slowly, slowly, his left hand came up off his thigh and into the air. "That is wise, Mr. Jenkins." "Mr. McGregor." "Yes, sir." "My wife." "She is not your wife. She is not now, and she has not been since the day you sent 3 men to murder her." "My Hannah." "What about her?" "Tell her—" He stopped. "Tell her what, Mr. Jenkins." But Walter Jenkins did not finish the sentence. Whatever he had been going to say, he did not have the words for it, or he did not have the courage, or he did not have the right. His mouth closed, and his pale eyes that did not quite track together fixed on Caleb's face for one long beat, and then he looked down at his horse's mane, and he did not look up again. The Rangers came up the road in a hard, fast column, and Captain Hollis Reyes was riding at the head of them, and he was a tall, lean, dark man in his middle 40s, with eyes the same gray-green as May's, and he did not need Caleb to tell him which rider in the yard was Walter Jenkins. He had been looking at that man in his mind every night for 3 years, since the morning he got the letter that his sister-in-law Sarah had fallen down a flight of stairs. He took Walter Jenkins off his horse himself. He did it gently. He did it without raising his voice. He did it the way a man does a thing when he has waited a long time for it and has decided that he will not allow himself the luxury of doing it badly. And when Walter Jenkins was on the ground in irons, and the 5 men were disarmed, and the Rangers were watering their horses at Caleb's trough, Captain Hollis Reyes walked up onto the porch and took off his hat and stood in front of Caleb McGregor for a long moment without speaking. "Mr. McGregor." "Captain." "Where is she?" "Around back, in the cellar, with the child." "Is she alive?" "She is alive." A long breath. "Thank you, Mr. McGregor." "You are welcome, Captain." "I expect we have a great deal to talk about." "I expect we do, but not yet. Not right this minute." "Why not right this minute?" Caleb looked at the man. "Because I have a woman in a cellar who has been waiting 3 years to see your face, Captain. And I have a child in that cellar who has been waiting her whole life to be in a room with kin who will protect her. And I am going to go around back and unbolt that door, and I am going to bring them out, and they are going to see you first. Before anything else, before any questions, before any reports, before any of the rest of the world. They see you first." Captain Hollis Reyes put his hat back on his head. "Lead the way, Mr. McGregor." That night, after the Rangers had gone with their prisoners, and after Captain Reyes had sat at Hannah's bedside for 2 hours and held her good hand and not spoken 3 words, and after May had fallen asleep in her uncle's lap in the chair beside the bed, Caleb stood out on his porch alone in the warm summer dark and watched the moon come up over the cottonwoods. After a while, Hannah's voice came from inside. "Big Cal." "Yes, Hannah." "You said by the fire, with a cup of coffee in my hand." "I said that." "Bring me the coffee." He brought her the coffee. She was sitting up against the pillow. The bruise on her face was beginning to fade at the edges, going from black to yellow-green. The stitches above her eye were due to come out in a few days. She took the cup in her good hand and sipped it, and then she looked up at him. "Big Cal." "Yes. I never told you what I was going to say in the cabin, before they came." "I told you to save it." "I am saying it now." "All right." She looked at him for a long moment. "You came after me, Big Cal. To the ranch, knowing what was there, knowing what could happen. You came and you brought me out. You brought my May out. You stood between us and a man with a rifle, and you put your own body in the way. And in the road, when you had him at the end of your gun, and the world would have been better for it, you let an 11-year-old child stop you. Because the child asked. And I want to tell you, Caleb McGregor, that I have known a great many men in my life. My daddy, my brother-in-law, the men on the Jenkins ranch, my husband, and not one of them, Big Cal, would have done what you did. Not one. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" He stood there at the foot of the bed with his hands hanging at his sides. "Hannah, Big Cal, I do not know what kind of life you and the child are going to want after all of this. I do not know if it will be one you want to live in a one-room cabin, 3 days' ride from the nearest town with a fat rancher who talks slow and don't know the first thing about raising up a girl child. I do not know if you will want to be in Texas at all. I do not know any of that. But I want you to know that whatever life you want, Hannah Boone, you have got a friend in this world who will lay down his last breath to get it for you. And if there is room in that life somewhere down the road for a man like me to sit at your table, well, I will be waiting on the porch when you decide." Hannah Boone looked at him over the rim of her coffee cup. "Big Cal." "Yes." "Sit down." He sat down. She set the coffee cup on the bedside table. She reached out with her good hand and took his. Her small hand disappeared inside his big rough one. She held it there for a long moment without saying anything. And then she looked up at him with her good eye, the gray-green prairie after storm eye, and she said, "You sit on my porch, Caleb McGregor. You do not wait on it. You sit on it, with me, starting tonight." In the chair across the room, May stirred against her uncle's shoulder, and her small voice came up sleepy from the dark. "Aunt Hannah?" "Yes, baby." "Is Caleb going to stay?" Hannah did not look away from his face. "Yes, May. Caleb is going to stay. Forever. A long beat. Forever, baby." May nodded into her uncle's shoulder. "Good," she said. And out on the warm summer plain, somewhere south of the cabin, an old wagon road that had once belonged to a man called Pike led on into the dark and ran out somewhere in a country that none of them would ever see again. And 80 miles north, in the empty parlor of a big white house in Dry Creek, a green ledger lay open on a marshal's desk, with the wind from an open window stirring its pages. And in a one-room cabin at the end of a creek, a big, quiet man sat holding a small woman's hand, and a child slept safe in the arms of her own blood, and the long dust of a long summer settled at last to the ground. He had found her dying in the mud. He had brought her home. She had carried his second life to him the way he had carried hers across his saddle, and neither of them was ever going to let it go.